All right, so hello everyone. My name's Connie, and I'm an advocate for MetUpUK. And today I'm interviewing 4 of my longest best friends. We've been to school together, about what they know about my treatments and cancer care. So we've got Vicky, Charlotte, Sam, and Sam. So girls, I'm going to just ask you random questions and just tell me what you think. So the first question I want to talk about is, do you know that there are different subtypes of cancer? And do you know what my subtype is?
I feel like I kind of have to talk because nobody else is. I don't know. Oh, Sam, Fanny put a hand up. Fanny put a hand up. I was going to say, I do know that there are subcategories, but I can't really go into it too much, which makes me sound really ignorant, and I'm very aware of that. But I think, like we said before, there's I can't really, I couldn't really go into it.
All right.
We'll hand it over to Fanny. Fanny can really talk about it.
Sam?
Do you mean subtypes as in like the whole metastatic thing, or within
If I rephrase the question, so do you know what estrogen sensitive cancer means?
Yeah, so that's kind of when it's more sensitive to the hormone estrogen. So isn't there some cancers that are sensitive to hormones, and that kind of causes more growth of the cancer, certain hormones? Is that right? And then some, I'm not entirely sure of other categories really, though. Mainly kind of that one, because I remember that's linked to you, isn't it? The estrogen one.
Yeah, there's one more that's linked to me. Girls, remember that one?
Is it the B something? Is it that? It was the hereditary thing.
That's my genes. That was BRCA.
Okay, that's yeah.
So I'm HERS2 positive.
Oh yeah. Now that you've said that.
So do you know what that means? Can you remember?
Not really.
So if I said, you obviously estrogen and progesterone. So that was when your hormones feed off your estrogen progesterone receptors. And then I was estrogen and progesterone positive, but mine has mutated. But I am HERS2 and have always been HERS2. So that's when my cancer feeds off proteins that are made. So HERS2 proteins is part of your body, but breast cancer cells make more, and other types of cancers make more. So that's it. Do you know what triple negative breast cancer means? No, we've got lots of heads. So triple negative is that at the moment, we don't really understand what is feeding the cancer and why it's growing. So it's quite a tough cancer to manage because treatments are more limited than others. So, right. Thank you, girls. What's your understanding of off-label drugs?
I'm probably wrong, but is that when it's like the pharmaceutical companies that produce different treatments, so they're not available via the NHS, it's via like private companies? I'm probably completely wrong.
No, you're close. You're on the right track. So if I said something like aspirin, what's aspirin used for?
So like headaches, but they can use it for other things, can't they?
Yes, so that's what we mean by off-label drugs. So they are the NHS are nice, have licensed them to be used for certain treatments, but through research and that we are discovering that certain drugs can be used to treat other diseases and stuff, so such as cancer. So thank you, Sam. You're all doing good, girls.
So does that mean that's
so
when?
medical.
So is it basically then that's when you're using a drug for not what its intended use was for, but it's it's helping with something else as well?
Yeah. So we can carry this on. So how do you feel if you knew there were drugs out there that were relatively cheap, that studies have shown are working for breast cancers and other cancers, but for some reason we can't get access to them being trialed or even licensed, you know, to be used in another form?
A bit annoyed. It's like, why?
Well, it's outrageous, really. If they're cheaper and affordable, then why aren't we using them? Why aren't we trialing them? It's ridiculous.
Especially if they're already produced and they're around for other things. What is it? A lot of red tape or something?
Sometimes it's red tape, and other times it's you know, because trials are funded not just by the NHS and stuff, they are funded by pharmaceuticals and companies who've got an interest.
Right.
So sometimes it's just because they just don't see them to be fundable, profitable.
It's all down to money.
To make money,
Yeah.
which is disgusting.
And how, just out of interest, Connie, as well, how do they know as well that medication could be used elsewhere? Is that?
So there have been some trials or early research, and then they have trialed it and it's shown positive results, or results that are they are positive, but they're quite inconclusive to really understand.
So they don't follow it on.
Yeah.
Is it almost like the pharmaceutical companies become aware of that and maybe?
Yeah, because obviously.
Or for it to be sort of funded kind of thing, or?
Yeah, it just makes it complicated. There's just all these steps that for some reason they just say nope, even though you know, some of these drugs cost like £10 a month to use. You know,
Which is crazy, because they'd rather pump so much money into things that they don't even necessarily know at all. They've got, like, you know, no grounding in anything, and then they run with that rather than something that, like you say, they've done sort of initial trials and maybe particularly, you know, it's crazy that they want to be spending all this money pumping, because it's not unlimited, and people's lives, you know, you can't just keep waiting. So why can't they just look at things that are cheaper?
I'll keep it a price on a life, like.
Exactly, but that's what pharmaceutical companies do, isn't it?
It's all
It must be really frustrating for the people that have done the research as well, because they've obviously thought that there's something worth investigating if they've researched that, and then if for someone to not do anything with the results that could help people, they must just find that really, really hard. So is there actually any examples that's happened with them?
Aspirin is one.
Really?
Yeah, metformin is another.
Diabetes tablet.
Yeah, and there's other issues that some of these drugs people have already been on, so they're on it with their current treatment, which is why it's inconclusive and makes it difficult to know. But I suppose as well, another thing, is quite scary for someone like me, where the results are positive but they're not, to go on a trial where all I take is aspirin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I was going to say, why do they not just, if it's, especially if it's cheap, why can't GPs just try this sort of thing? But like you say, it's a bit scary to try that and rely on that, and then it doesn't have the result if it's
yeah, or to not really know. And also,
really know.
like all drugs, they have different side effects and, you know, issues.
Do you know what's, sorry, Con, but you know, like when you look at all the adverts and the different things that are on the telly about all this fundraising, about all this money and all this research, and it's like,
where does it go?
Yeah, like when there's all these things that need to be, you know, all these possibilities that need to be researched and funded and looked into.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? These are questions that need to be asked, and I'm not the right person to answer. I wish I was. I want to talk about what you know about your understanding of first line and second line is.
Do you mean in regards to the treatment or?
Yeah, so obviously my treatment is HER2 positive, so all my drugs have been targeted to my HER2. So my first line treatment would have been Herceptin with docetaxel.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to see what your understanding of what that means, first line.
So is first line like what you would receive in like early diagnosis, and then would second line be when you're further along? Like, are they stronger in a way that you'd receive further along treatment?
Yes. So yeah, you're on the right tracks there. So yeah, it's not so much early stage diagnosis. When you're first diagnosed, that is like gold standard. That's the first drug you access.
Yeah.
And then you move on to second line. So my second line was Kadcyla, if you girls remember that one. So yes, so then this moves on to my next discussion, is that, you know, I've had many treatments, as you know, but I wanted to know how you felt and what your understanding was that if you have certain drugs as a first line, you may not get other drugs as a first line treatment or as another treatment along your, you know, diagnosis. So what do you think about that?
So why? Is there
Why?
a
That's
particular
what I was
reason?
asking. Yeah.
Can it be like there's contraindications to the previous medications, or is it all just?
Yeah, do they like interfere with each other? If you've had one, will they interfere with the next lot?
No, it's basically down to how they're just licensed. And obviously where they are in trials, they have shown that they can be more effective down this line. So for me, for instance, we'll give you an example. I was diagnosed in 2013, wasn't I? And I had Herceptin and docetaxel because that was standard line for HER2.
You had that for quite a long time as well, though, the Herceptin, didn't you?
Yeah. But then 6 months down the line, pertuzumab was licensed, and that was licensed as first line treatment with docetaxel and Herceptin.
Okay.
So, but because I already had started Herceptin, I couldn't get access to pertuzumab. But also because it's licensed as a first line, I can't access it now unless I self-fund.
Well, so it could work for you, but you're not allowed to even try because you've already had a certain other drug.
Yes.
Who makes the decision?
Yeah. It makes no sense.
Though it's ridiculous.
So yeah, so the only way to access these kind of drugs is to either ask for compassionate access or
what classes is compassionate? Like what?
The whole situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, and this can go on. So and this changes if your subtype changes as well. So some cancers go from HER2 positive to HER2 negative. Or they go from being hormone positive and HER2 positive to then suddenly being triple negative. So even though you think because your cancer's changed, you could kind of start again, that's not always the case.
But surely it should be that every consultant with every cancer patient can look at the cancer patient individually and decide based on all the drugs that are around which would be a good one to try and which would be suitable. But so you're saying that they can't do that they can only choose from certain ones based on kind of a sequence of events of what the patient's already had, and that's just to do with like a pattern of what other patients go through. It's not to do with what could work for them. Like what? That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Why can they not look at all drugs available and decide which would be a good one for you?
Well, that'd be magical. because there is a thing called tumor profiling. So I want you to have a guess at what you think that might include.
Like individual mapping of your cancers, I suppose, and kind of where, like the specifics about where your tumors come from and develop and stuff. Is that on the right line?
Yeah, you're close. So it looks at your genetic makeup, and then it looks at kind of what cancer drugs you could have based on your genetics. So there's drugs that are I can't think of the word myself. So there's different genetic triggers. Oh, my mind's gone blank. And there's certain drugs targeted for that. But unless you actually get tested for it, you don't necessarily have it. So I was on a trial which tested one of these proteins in my blood, which meant I could get a drug on this trial, which is licensed at the moment for first line treatment, but only for women that are hormone sensitive.
Okay.
So it's looking at that, but it can look at everything and all the different drugs. And like you say, it's kind of like then a map, like a guide to what would work. And also shows that, you know, some drugs don't work for other people because it's strong.
What makes them decide that it's first line and first line only then? What is there specific research that shows it doesn't work if you've already tried something else, or is it literally just like how do they even classify that?
Guidance that you have that and you can't have that.
Yeah, it's based on trials and results. So I'm trying to make it so I'm not telling you guys the answers. So
I was going to say, does it have a lot to do with NICE guidance and all of that business and what they put in place and all the red tape with NICE and what they license and what they say and everything like that?
There's that, but where does NICE get their information from?
Oh,
Research.
Clinical trials and research.
Yeah.
Like certain ones, I suppose.
So with clinical trials, do you know how many there are different phases of clinical trials?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean different phases? Like
before it's tested on humans?
Yes, there's obviously research in labs, and then it goes into human trials. So you have like phase ones. Do you know what phase ones are mainly about? Yeah, phase one clinical trials. So that's looking at when it's first introduced to humans, it's looking at dosage and safety, and a little bit of results, and then it goes into a million phases, but basically it's 3 phases, and each of them have their own parts, and that collects the data and that. And usually when you get to the phase 3, that's when they are comparing it to what drugs are now.
Right. Okay.
And that's how they decide where it's most effective, if it's effective as a third line or if it seems to be really good as a second line treatment.
But if we go back to like that genetic makeup and mapping and things like that, you could have 100 people on a trial and they would react differently to somebody else that could then have that treatment and that could work. So like
and at different stages as well.
Yeah, like if there was more funding into those research and stuff, you'd have more people that you could actually, you know, test them on and not have So
this is where trials are interesting, because they look at things like overall survival rate. So do you girls know what that is?
So kind of the average like prognosis of the people that took the drug, surely.
Yep. And then progression-free status.
Progression-free, would you say progression-free status?
Is that how long? Remission. Yeah, remission or no sign of disease.
Yeah.
Like the progression to that.
Yeah. So you're all spot on in a way. So yeah, it's the overall is like, so they'll take the average of everyone's survival within that trial, and then your progression is they take, you know, the average from how long it took the cancer to be resistant to the drug. So as you say, this way then everyone's different. Some people may not have only been on it for a couple of months, and some are on it for years.
Yeah.
You know, and so forth.
I remember we had a conversation, Connie, about Herceptin, about sort of the research that some people had only been on it sort of for a year, whereas there was a woman, I remember we read that she'd been on it for like 12 years. Like,
yeah.
You was on it for a good like 5 or 6 years, weren't you?
Oh, I wish.
No. Oh, you was on it for quite a long time, Herceptin.
I was, but I
Yes.
did have progression on it, but I was
Right.
fortunate enough to have surgery,
Yeah.
you know, which I suppose with access to treatments and stuff, we can talk about that. So people can get access to radiotherapies targeted and surgeries, but sometimes you're only given one opportunity. You know, again, how do you feel about that? Even though we know surgeries are quite expensive and, you know, targeted radiotherapy.
Well, so you're saying some people are only given one opportunity. What do you mean by that? One opportunity for surgery, or?
Yeah, so I had a liver hepectomy.
Yeah.
But I was only given that opportunity once. And for some reason, it was declined when I had progression, even though the progression was quite small. And then it got to a point that when I progressed again, it did become inoperable because it was just too large and where it was.
So why do you only get one opportunity again? Is that just what they decide is a good idea, or?
Do you know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
Expensive surgeries.
Yeah, it is down to funding.
Doesn't seem fair, really, to me. I mean, I've said it before, and I really don't feel how, like, an alcoholic who just destroys their liver willingly can just go and get a liver transplant. I know they can't just go and get a liver transplant, but they're given a liver transplant. I've said that before. Like, it just doesn't seem fair when there's someone else that really deserves it, they're really fighting for their life, that can't go and get this surgery. To me, it just seems unfair and unjust when your purpose is destroying your life and you can't, you know, someone else can't go and get that surgery. For me, I feel like if they think it could work, even the slightest possibility it could work, it's worth going for it and it's worth doing it.
I also think,
no, sorry, Vic. No, just yeah, it angers me, that bit. I just find it quite selfish and it does anger me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Sam. And I think, you know, there's always that chance if you do that operation that it could come back. You know, we know that it did, but like, same as you when you said with an alcoholic, you know, there's always a chance that they're still going to keep drinking, you know, and you know, there's still that chance, but they still do it. So why is that? Why is it different? You know, it's not fair.
Yeah.
True. But I suppose playing devil's advocate a little bit, I think, do they just maybe think that sometimes like surgery and the impact of that some surgeries and the risk of that some surgeries can pose, does that maybe doesn't necessarily outweigh kind of the good that it will do, especially with your kind of the way your cancer is, that it's already kind of it's they all can
I get it.
So maybe they think like it's kind of doing the surgery, the risk that the surgery is posed. Do you think that might be some of it? Like it's not kind of worth the outcome, that, you know, do you see what I mean?
It could be, but how can we then change these attitudes and improve cancer care if everything's red taped? If treatments are red taped because they're only licensed for a certain time, you know.
Surely it should be down to choice, maybe choice of the patient and choice of even the consultant, but they don't even have that power, do they?
But it's risk, isn't it? There's going to be a risk in everything. Like if you do or if you don't, like it's.
That's true. That's true. And I mean, kind of, it's a risky business anyway already. Everything that you have to go through. So you've just got to take risks, haven't you? Really, if you're going to get anywhere, it's all everything you do is a risk. In your case, gone, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Oh, you're doing so well, girls. Thank you. So, if we talk about progression, what does that mean to you, girls?
Moving on to different stages, or moving
Growth.
when it's moved from one part of the body to spread to another, like through your lymph nodes or through your blood, or
Isn't that what I know I said this earlier because I'm with my dyslexia, but can someone
Metastatic.
sorry, that's
I have trouble pronouncing things as well. Don't apologise.
it moves elsewhere to like where it predominantly was.
So it can do, or it can just, so the tumour could be still in one organ, but it's just grown. So then it would then move on to, you'd have to move on to your next treatment. So we'll put a little bit of a yes or no, I suppose, with this one. Do you think there's an infinite amount of drugs out there for me? No, sorry.
I think not that you have access to. I feel like there could be further drugs out there, but I feel like there's only so much that you're allowed access to.
Yeah. I would say that, yeah.
And the same would be with clinical trials. Do you think there's always going to be clinical trials for me to access?
No.
I'd hope so, but the answer is probably no.
So why do you not think there's clinical trials out there for me? What do you think?
I think like we've seen kind of from recently things that have impacted that, but kind of if something's not at a certain sort of level or something's not right in your body, like at the body at the time, or doesn't meet kind of how that treatment might work. Does that make sense? So if something's not quite at that point when that treatment's going to be given, then you can't have it. Does that make sense?
And how would you, so part of it is, so you're all right. So the main obstacles is sometimes, because you're not well enough.
Yeah, you have to fit a certain profile, don't you? And if you don't fit, then.
But what if your profile is something based on like bloods, and so you're an ideal candidate, you're fitting well, but your bloods are showing that because your cancer's active, things are moving not in the direction you want, but that's your only obstacle. How does that make you feel?
A bit cross, because if they do want to exclude you for that reason, then I kind of feel that might just be because they don't want it to hinder their research if things were to go pear-shaped. Well, I don't know if I'm right, but if I am, then that's you're talking about individual people that these trials might help. Yeah, it might help them too to get good results for this drug and to get it out there, but you're still talking about individual people that you're dealing with, really. And if it could help them, then why can you not try, even if things aren't that great for them at the moment? It's surely worth that try for that person's life.
Yeah, I agree. I still think you have the right to try.
Yeah.
Because you know all the risks that are involved, you still have the right to try.
So do you think maybe a solution would be if, these trials have, maybe it could be a phase 1, but they want your bloods to be good. But do you think it would be useful if they had like a subgroup? So you have people that, the perfect candidate, and then you have people whose blood might not be the same. So maybe like for me, where my liver's starting to show damage, I could fit in that group, because then that drug could work for me. And, sometimes it could only give me months, but sometimes it could give me years.
I think unless unless a trial, it meant that if you went forward with it, it was going to have like an adverse effect, as in it was going to make your situation a lot worse. I think that should be the only circumstance where you shouldn't be given that opportunity, and not because you shouldn't be, but like, again, I think, like the girl said, it should come down to choice. But like you said, I think a subgroup, you know, you're giving people that choice, like, and yeah, unless it's the reason is purely because it's of the adverse effect, then if it would be completely negative, then okay. But other than that, I don't think anyone should have the right to say no.
Well, I think as well that if they did do it that way, as you suggested, Con, then the people in charge of the trial would still have the data that they want in the main group. You know, if it is to do if they don't want kind of results that aren't going to help boost their trial. But yeah, so if surely people that weren't quite as ideal but were ideal enough, like you say, could go in a subgroup and go try it anyway, because you never know, that might help their research as well, because they might find that actually it really does help somebody that they thought it might not. And then so surely any data like that is helpful. But as I say, if they did it into two separate groups, as you said, they at least they still have the data from the group that they think it's going to work best on, surely.
Yeah.
Also, not everyone's going to be the type of candidate that's going to fit the first group. So, you know, you're making it for people that just fit into that category. And actually, as we know,
it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, but they'll still get the data that they wanted, that is set out for, if they still keep that group as the main group. But then they might get unexpected results from other people that they didn't think would be as suitable, and that might help anyway. So why would they not try?
Exactly. There's so much unknown, so why wouldn't they just try? It doesn't make any sense. Surely you'd want to reach out to as many people as you possibly could, you know, get treated, get helped.
Yeah, no, thank you, girls. Yeah, these are issues I live with every day.
But do they ever do that though? Does any clinical trial ever do two different groups? Like, would that I think, well, surely that would be something that would be quite logical that you'd do that anyway.
Well, I haven't been offered one yet, so I don't know. There might be.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we'll wrap it up because we've been talking for some time. I just want to thank you, girls. You know, thanks a lot for joining us and helping us. You know, MetUp needs everyone's support, and I need your support. I suppose the way I would like to end it would be if you could sum up maybe a sentence or a word that you feel, just how you feel about, you know, because I can't access these drugs, or, you know, because there's things that we talked about, these hurdles. How does it make you feel?
Outraged.
Outraged.
Outraged. Yeah. Disappointed. Sorry, that's more than one.
No, that's fine. That's what I wanted. A sentence or a word. So outraged.
Outraged and disappointed.
Probably angry.
Yeah.
And also, you know, just how it makes probably us feel as your friends, how angry it makes us feel, that I can't even begin to imagine how it must make you feel. You know, it's just not fair.
Yeah, just frustrating. And just hearing you speak more about it today, and kind of it just makes me a bit confused as well, to be honest. I just don't understand why a consultant can't just look at everything available and just make that choice for you. Why they have to go through all this silliness. And I think I get the impression that it's all to do with the results, like they're trying to shape the results that they want. Like, but that's just not real life, and you're not going to get real results like that if you try and shape the results, are you? Yeah, it's very annoying. It's more than annoying. It's playing with people's lives, to be honest. It's not right.
Definitely.
And Charlotte?
Well, it's all of those things. It's frustrating, it's disheartening. Yes, like you say, it's playing with people's lives, and it's it's just thinking, and a lot of it for me, like we've discussed as well, it all seems to just come down to money.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like your life is invaluable and I can't put price on that. So it just makes me really angry.
Oh, okay. We'll all take a deep breath. So thanks again, girls. And, you know, anyone that's watching, thanks for listening.
You're welcome, Con, and you're a bloody superstar, and I hope you know that.
You are. We love you lots and lots.
You feel privileged.